Hello, welcome to another episode of the Book Report. I guess they're episodes. I haven't really decided on that yet. Anyway, this is a book that I definitely enjoyed. Richard Rorty, Achieving Our Country, Leftist Thought in 20th Century America. It was a series of lectures that were done in the late 90s. And it's short. It's a short, fun read. It's a little... The writing is... he's a little philosophical. It's a little meandering. Sometimes I crave just the clear writing, state what you're trying to say. But it's poetic, it's fun. If you enjoy that sort of intellectual, philosophical, artistic, critical type writing, or at least can tolerate it, it's and you're interested in progressive movements, left-wing politics, or center-left, or just political movements in general, although he's clearly coming from a left-wing perspective. But one that I'm generally sympathetic with. He's not a radical. He's not... in fact, he's quite critical of dogmatism or ideal. He's very much into practical. What can you actually get done on the ground to make people's lives better, right? Forget all this highfalutin philosophy and not philosophy, all this highfalutin, scientific rationalism and observing hypercriticalism. Like, get in the dirt, do the hard work, make things better, which fortunately the left is getting back to. But I do think a lot of his criticisms are pretty legitimate. His first lecture is titled American National Pride. And I think this paragraph kind of sums it up. I said earlier that we now have among many American students and teachers a spectatorial, disgusted, mocking left rather than a left which dreams of achieving our country. This is not the only left we have, but it is the most prominent and vocal one. Members of this left find America unforgivable, as Baldwin did, and also unachievable, as he did not. This leads them to step back from their country and, as they say, theorize, quote-unquote, it. It leads them to do what Henry Adams did, to give cultural politics preference over real politics, and to mock the very idea that democratic institutions might once again be made to serve social justice. It leads them to prefer knowledge to hope. So I completely agree with that, right? From the progressive era, which brought us the the 40-hour work week, ended child labor, universal suffrage, all kinds of things, into the FDR era, into the left of center consolidation of, and slight retreat, but consolidation of the safety net, Social Security and all that through the 50s, into the Great Society, into the 60s. The left was focused on power, on where the rubber meets the road, on pragmatic, what works, what doesn't work. Let's try things out, and if it doesn't work, or fix it, tweak it, If it works, great. Tweak it, make it better. So how do we actually make people's lives better? And since that time, cynicism, I think, has become more dominant, a more observer. Instead of getting in there and pulling the levers of power, the left has predominantly taken a step back and started to become hypercritical, an observer. I mean, that's the key word in here, right? Spectatorial, spectators, not participants, not pragmatic participants of the political process, which I think we've gotten back to. I mean, I hope we've done a bit of that, with progressive candidates in Congress again, and really pushing back against these extreme right-wing, frankly, some of them fascists, who have no shame and are quite happy to destroy the democratic institutions of the country for their own power, right? We need to push back against that. So the next, and there are really only two main lectures and then a few shorter lectures. They're all interesting if you're into these kinds of topics. I really did enjoy the book, actually. He has quite an interesting background and history, and he relates it fairly well. Although, like I said, some of the writing is a little convoluted, but it flows. It's good. It's well written. Okay, so this lecture is called "A Cultural Left," and again, it includes some of the similar themes, but I think this paragraph's worth reading. I've been arguing that the appropriate response to such observations is that we Americans should not take the point of view of a detached cosmopolitan spectator. We should face up to unpleasant truths about ourselves, but we should not take those truths to be the last word about our chances for happiness or about our national character. Our national character is still in the making. Few in 1897 would have predicted the progressive movement, the 40-hour week, women's suffrage, the New Deal, the civil rights movement, the successes of second-wave feminism, or the gay rights movement. Nobody in 1997 can know that America will not, in the course of the next century, witness even greater moral progress. I really did enjoy this book. I think it's even more heartening to read it over 20 years after it was written, when the left, I think, has actually taken a lot of his advice, knowingly or not, and moved more in that pragmatic direction, away from the observer, critic perspective, and back into the levers of power. And how do we move things forward again? Because it's not enough to just push back against fascism, anti-democratic power over. We need to move forward. We need to make things better. We need to address the wrongs that still exist, and there are a plethora of them, unfortunately. But that's where we're at, and be pragmatic, and let's get to work. Okay, so achieving our country. He also has in the first quote I mentioned Baldwin, and not Alec. This is oh geez, I'm having a hard time with names these days. James Baldwin, I think. Let me look that up, actually. Yes, James Baldwin. He actually has a couple good paragraphs, or more than that, quite a few pages dealing with Baldwin, and that paragraph alludes to part of it, and how Baldwin combined razor sharp, highly accurate critiques of America's failings, but remained hopeful that that we could still achieve the promise of America. The America that never was, yet must be. That's Baldwin, right? So let's get back to work. Let's get to work, which we have been. We've won some elections. That's great. Let's keep winning elections. Keep moving the country forward. No more observer. No more passive critique. Let's do the work. Okay. Anyway, good read. I enjoyed it. Achieving Our Country. Rorty.